the Israel-Iran conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There will be no talks with the U.S. if Israel continues attacks. That from the foreign minister of Iran. The Americans have sent serious messages asking for serious talks, he said, but we have no words for America. He said that the U.S. is part of Israel's crimes and aggression against Iran. In a separate interview with the BBC, the deputy foreign minister warned that there would be hell for the whole region if the U.S. joined Israel's attacks on the Islamic Republic. This war is not America's war, he said. But if they want to get into this war, President Trump will be remembered forever for the war that is not his war. They at the same time, and we'll discuss this obviously with Avila in just a few minutes, they at the same time, this administration, as they contemplate whether or not to get into potential military involvement in the form of U.S. strikes, that you've heard about the bunker buster bomb, etc. At the same time that they're considering this, and we're told that the president's going to have a 2-week window to decide. He always has a 2-week window. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but on the Russia thing, he had a 2-week window. He had a 2-week window in Trump season 1 on his healthcare plan. You know, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to announce it. It's always 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. I don't think he knows what he wants to do.
No. He's got another big national security meeting today, so maybe, he's gathering information, Mark. He's gathering intel from the very best sources.
I will tell you that, funny you should mention this, because in navigating this Iran crisis, Trump is not going to his intel community per se. He's not going to the Department of Defense head, Pete Hegseth. He sees that they know nothing. They are part of the show. He cast Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth as part of the show. He casts Jeanine Pirro as part of the show. He casts these people who are pure sycophants. He casts them as part of the show, but he also sees the utterly shallow nature of Pete Hegseth. He sees that he's an empty vessel. He sees that he's a mess. He sees that he's on a public forum like Signal Chat, an unsecured communication platform like Signal Chat. And so when it comes to this, there's good reporting on this. As Trump faces a critical decision about whether to join Israel's military strikes against Iran's nuclear program, this is from the Washington Post, perhaps the most momentous in his presidency, neither Tulsi Gabbard or Pete Hegseth are playing starring roles as members of Trump's inner circle of advisors. And by the way, I wish the press wouldn't say starring roles and stuff like it. Just cheapens the conversation. This isn't a show, man. This is really important. Trump treats it all like a show. He's into the theater. But it would be nice if you journalists would just talk about critical roles instead of starring roles. Anyway, Trump instead has turned to a small group of lower key but more experienced aides. The, quote, Tier 1 group advising on a potential U.S. strike on Iran is composed of Vice President J.D. Vance, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and CIA Director John Radcliffe. Together, this quartet is helping Trump as he decides whether to launch weapons that only the United States possesses to target nuclear enrichment sites in Iran. So as they meet, it's interesting to me that he's not calling on a Hegseth. Hegseth runs the effing military. And he's not involved in what would be the biggest military commitment of Trump's presidency. It just speaks to the fact that he knows he's fielded a clown show.
I actually find that comforting. Good. Keep him out of it.
But whether or not he'll reach the right conclusion, again, it's being filtered through Trump's mind. Now, I will say this. He has lost a bunch of the MAGA base. We spoke of this yesterday on some level. There's a bunch of the MAGA base that is associated with wanting Trump to be clear of any wars, having bought into the Trump BS about I'm going to end all wars. I'm not going to get America involved in any wars. And then there's a bunch of the MAGA base that's associated with the Christian right, for example, that very much wants to get us involved in the war. Huckabee is an example of that. I mean, he's a Christo-fascist, and he's the one who is dealing. I think he's the ambassador to Israel. So he has a place at the table in this conversation. So Trump is being pulled in this way. But if you look at polling, overwhelmingly, it's not popular to get involved. So when he looks at polls, and Trump is all about that, he sees that popularity, even among the MAGA faithful, is just not there for American involvement. That's why I think he won't get involved. But he's also so susceptible to the last person he spoke with. He's also very susceptible to the biggest propaganda machine perhaps in American history, and that's Fox News Channel. And Fox News Channel is rah, 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 war, war, war. We got to do this. We got to jump on these Iranians before they get this stuff. We've been hearing about the Iranian enrichment program for years. They're always a heartbeat away from getting a nuclear weapon. I'm not saying they're not. But I am saying that this moment in time seems to have been informed by a lot of things that maybe didn't pertain directly to whether or not Iran was close to getting a bomb. For example, the Israelis note that Iran is diminished in the region, right? They don't have the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. They were decapitated by the Israeli response to October 7th. They don't have Syria anymore. You don't have Assad, a client state there anymore. He's gone, right? Even the Houthis are diminished a bit. By the way, just because I mentioned that, so they picked this time, I think, because they felt we can catch a weakened Iran right now. And I've left out the fact that Iran was militarily weakened because of the last exchange with Israel, again, related to October 7th. I did want to mention, just because I talked about the Houthis, did you see the post-mortem literally on that the Houthi thing, the signal chat thing that they were talking about, the way that they were going to I don't know if I put it in the rundown, Albert. I don't know if I did. I think I just had read the piece about just what a failure it was. The idea somehow that, Hegseth is talking about what a great victory it was. We went after the Houthis. That was the signal chat stuff that we were all reading about. He was sharing with his wife and his brother and, anybody who had come to Thanksgiving who was on that signal chat. He was telling them about this attack on the Houthis. And when questioned about it, all he talked about was, no one wants to talk about the success of the mission. It's all the mainstream media after this great successful mission. Well, finally, in testimony yesterday, he was called out on it. He was called out on it in a big way. The fact that it wasn't a successful mission. It didn't reopen any shipping lanes. So the abysmal failure where we lost a couple of, was it Hornet fighters, and we lost American hardware to the tune of $200 million. It was a failure. It was a profound failure, Pete Hegseth. So anyway, it's in this all that Trump has to make a decision about whether or not the Americans should be involved in this. So, and again, I return to the fact that we had a deal with Iran. There was an Iran nuclear deal, wasn't perfect, but it was in place, and it did seem to be some governor on their ability to enrich uranium and pursue a weapon-guided development of nuclear capabilities. It was signed by Barack Obama and then ripped up by Donald Trump in season 1 of his entire crazy presidency, in which he just went after everything that Obama did and pulled us out of it. And now he's trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and he can't. So that's what's happening in Iran. We are waiting. We're on a 2-week loop. The other thing I just want to mention in international relations is associated with Putin and Xi. Dateline St. Petersburg and Beijing. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping both condemning Israel yesterday over strikes on Iran and agreeing that de-escalation is needed. Putin and Xi's strong condemnation of Israel's action indicates that they violated the UN chapter and other norms of international law. That's pretty rich coming from Putin. Both Moscow and Beijing fundamentally believe that there is no military solution to the current situation and issue warnings to let diplomacy prevail. Diplomacy may prevail in the end. We will see. Again, there was a diplomatic solution already in place, and he tore it up. And I'll remind you that our lead diplomat in all of this is, what's his name again, Kim?
Witkoff.
Witkoff, who's a real estate mogul. He is a billionaire real estate mogul. Witkoff is. He plays golf with Donald Trump. He knew Donald Trump from that world of real estate, and he became our lead negotiator on Russia-Ukraine, on Iran-Israel. It is once again the power of incompetence. But if you're a pal of Trump, or you suck up enough, or you're on TV, you may have a shot at being in his administration. So that is that. There is a crypto exchange that pro-Israel hackers destroyed. They destroyed $90 million worth of crypto holdings. An anti-Iranian group known as Predatory Sparrow claimed the attack. Second operation in 2 days. They destroyed nearly 90 million of crypto holdings and threatened to expose the platform's source code. They claimed credit for this attack, make it the second operation in 2 days, they say. Tuesday, the group claimed to have destroyed data at Iran's state-owned bank SEPA during the time that there were increasing hostilities and missile attacks between Israel and Iran. And then Wednesday, they targeted Novatex, which is one of Iran's largest cryptocurrency exchanges. This, you might say, well, what is that, just cryptocurrency? Why is that important? Remember, cryptocurrency is the dark world in which you can, if you're a leader being sanctioned by the international community, see Russia, see Iran, you can avoid sanctions because you can pay and move money through the crypto world. And that's exactly what Iran was doing. So they finance terrorism around the world and they avoid sanctions in this crypto world. The hackers claimed that between the two operations, it was $90 million that was derailed. So that's the other thing that's going on at the same time. And what I wanted to play for Jim is the remarks that Trump made on the front lawn of the White House as he was putting up more flagpoles. Can you run a little of that, Albert? In which he basically says, I don't know what I'm going to do, or I know, and only I know. And here is Trump. The guy standing behind him, for those watching there, as you probably are aware by now, we ran this the other day, but I just want to share it again. This is the flagpole, erection of the flagpoles. There are two new flag. Yeah, he didn't want to say the word erection. Go ahead, Albert.
Have you been answered questions about whether you are moving closer, or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities? Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that, and they got hit. Remember 60 days, and then came the 60. 61 is going to become a very famous number. That was one hell of a hit. That first hit, that was one hell of a hit. Not sustainable, to be honest. That's where it ended. It ended on the first night. Yes.
Is it too late though? Do you think it's too late to now?
Really, nothing's too late. The only thing too late is Powell. Powell's too late. Too late, Powell.
Have the Iranians reached out to you, Mr. President?
What?
Have the Iranians reached out to you?
Yes.
And what did you say?
I said it's very late. I said it's very late to be talking. We may meet. It's. I don't know. There's a big difference between now and a week ago, right? Big difference.
Okay, it's never too late. So did they call you? Yeah, they called you. What did you say? I said that it's very late. Just to, there's an absurdity to a lot of what he says. He doesn't know. I think what he's going to do. He's playing the moment. I would just say this, Jim, and then I really want to hear what you have to say. But I would say that he's playing the moment, and at that moment, he's feeling as though the Israeli strike was so successful that he doesn't mind branding it as a Trump-related idea, that we gave them 60 days, and on the 61st day, this happened. Now I'd suggest, and as I've made this point over the last few days, that the popular support isn't there for American involvement. The MAGA support isn't there for American involvement. And so in response to that, he's modified his enthusiasm and even his rhetoric about what's happening there between Iran and Israel. But I'm very anxious to hear what you think.
Well, I was reading Dan Rather's column in Substack, and I think he was right on where he says that it's not his decision to make. The Constitution says that it's the Congress's decision to make. And it should be, before we strike another nation that hasn't attacked us, he has to go to Congress. And he hasn't done that. So he doesn't have any legitimate reason to do that. And for him to say, well, I don't know if I am, I don't know if I am not, it's not your call, buddy. And, it's like he's playing games out there. These are lives, and he's playing games. He likes to play with the press, and it's embarrassing, to have somebody like that making the real calls when it comes to the presidency. And it's really sad. It's not funny. He thinks it's all funny. It's not fun and games. It's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt, and somebody's going to get hurt. We send over. First of all, sure, we can wipe out the Iranian. Well, we think we can. We can wipe out the Iranian nuclear issue, the nuclear
Reactor.
bomb
We may
site.
or may not be able to do that, but yeah,
Right, we're not
we
sure,
think we
but
can. Yeah.
We think we can do that. But you know what that's going to do? That's going to open up terrorism all over the place. And we don't need that. I want to be safe well, that's a little unsure now too, but I'd like to be safe when I fly somewhere. And at first we got to fix our problems with the flying, but having terrorists, putting bombs in their shoes and that kind of thing, we don't need that. And that's exactly what he is inviting. There's no reason for us to attack Iran. We had a deal, not with Trump, but Obama struck a deal with him that would have rid the Iranians of their nuclear plants, and we didn't do that. Nuclear ability to make bombs,
Sure.
and we didn't do it. Because he scrapped the whole deal because of his ego.
He tore
And
up
I think
everything that
it's
was Obama's
Yeah.
name on it.
it was all because of his ego. So I
just lost
Name.
him a little bit. Yeah.
sorry, am I there?
No, you're good. You can talk right into the phone like it's a phone if you want. You don't have to hold it up. I don't know what you're doing, but I don't want you to have to worry about that.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
You know what I'm doing?
but let me just.
I don't
follow
know
up
what
on-
I'm doing. What are you talking about?
No, you're fine. You're fine. But let me just follow up on something you said, which is related to the kinds of retaliation that we might see that would maybe produce fear in the American populace, specifically these sort of sleeper cells that have been talked about. They're talked about in this country. They're talked about in other Western cities. So traveling Americans might be exposed to a kind of violence that they hadn't in the past. All of these things are both threatened and implied should anything happen to the supreme leader, that Ali Khamenei, and the supreme leader, as he's called, has been threatened directly by Trump, in that Trump said, well, we know where he is. We have no plans to take him out right now. And there's sort of this, it's the equivalent of what they're doing with these pizza deliveries across America, where, kind of, we know where you live. You better watch your step type thing.
He's playing games, Mark, and we can't play games like this. This is real life. This is, the stuff that we can't deal with, that we're not, foreign policy needs to be dealt with in a serious fashion. And he doesn't do that. He wants to play games, and it's really dangerous.
So, Jim, the other note that I had passed along in the first hour is related to the advisors that he's huddling with. I mean, we know he is essentially vacuous when it comes to the Middle East history, the history of these hostilities. He's concerned with, getting the Trump Hotel and Resort built along with the golf course in Qatar or whatever. I mean, he's got business there. But apart from that, he's not well informed on all of this. And so it's up to his coterie of advisors to inform him. So the head of the military, Pete Hegseth, who himself is an empty vessel, who's just kind of a show horse, he's out there with that look and with the strong rhetoric of the propaganda that kisses Trump's butt. He is out of it. He's not being consulted on Iranian policy and the policy of the Iran conflict as far as America is concerned. And the same is true of Tulsi Gabbard. I was just talking about this, is according to reporting from the Washington Post and other journalists in Washington. I wonder if you can speak to the way that now, as sort of the rubber meets the road in a more serious way, Trump knows that, there are those who are cast for the show, and that there are those who he can talk to and maybe get some kind of reality of what's going on the ground.
Yeah, I think that the only serious people he has in the government is Marco Rubio, who I'm not a fan of, but at least he's, was on the Foreign Relations Committee. He's been working he's been at work in the government for years. Him at the State Department, which is good, but normally, Mark, the defense secretary doesn't deal with policy a lot anyway. The defense secretary normally is, okay, we've decided we're going to attack this country. Tell us how we do that the best way. Or we need to defend ourselves from this country. How do we do that in the best way? So even though he's, and I can use this word on your station, even though he's a douche, he's not a factor in the first place. So I wouldn't worry about him so much. But who else does he have? He got rid of his National Security Council. He is depending upon, he governs by whim. And, you can't, it's bad enough when you govern by whim domestically. But on foreign policy, it's downright dangerous. And, we're lucky right now that Putin is preoccupied, because he'd be, have us in checkmate by this time against Trump. And I kind of think that's one of the reasons why Trump really hasn't tried very hard to fix the Ukrainian war, because he knows that right now his main adversary is busy. I'm wondering what China's doing, though. Is China ready? Is China ready to do something here? And they're a big concern, and they see a guy who's floundering, and I'm not sure what they're going to do.
It's interesting that you mentioned China, because I was talking about them right before you came on. China and Putin supposedly in a phone call both resolved in a statement that, negotiations have to prevail over any kind of military involvement with America. And so, I mean, that's it would be a violation of UN protocol, and I mean it's very rich considering what Putin has done with Ukraine. But that was essentially their position,
and it's kind of wise, isn't it? That's some wisdom there. That's what Trump ought to be doing, consulting with our allies, but he doesn't care for our allies because they present their own ideas, and he doesn't want them to. Doesn't want to hear anybody else's ideas. He wants to decide it, as he says, at the last second. I decide at the last second. You know what? Yeah, how freaking dangerous is it to decide on world peace at the last second without consulting people? It's crazy.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.